You will want to watch this video before you create any new Microsoft List forms. Today, we will do a feature comparison of Microsoft Forms and Microsoft List Forms feature to help you decide which form is best for you. This has been a requested video from my audience, and I have created the BAC 123 framework to guide you through this decision process. So let's nerd out. Let's first take a look at how we can create a form in both of these apps to ensure that we are all on the same page. In both cases, we can access these applications from the app launcher on the left-hand side in any of your 365 apps. From here, we can find lists as well as forms. And if you don't see these apps here, then you can go more apps. So here we are in both of these applications. And on the right-hand side, we'll see that we can create a new list. So this is how we would access the Microsoft List Forms feature. On the form side, at the top, we have new form or new quiz or a quick import. So for the purpose of this video, we will only be focusing on the form feature and not the quiz feature within Microsoft Forms. In Microsoft Forms, it's very tempting to go new form or select one of these templates, but I recommend scrolling on down and you will see my groups at the bottom. So if we select our Microsoft team or our 365 group, then we can go new group form here. In Microsoft Lists, we will go create new. And then from this window, we are going to have some different options. So you might want to jump to form, but that is going to be creating a blank form. And as a side note, this list, form, gallery, calendar, or board are all the same thing. They all just come with a different default view, but at the end of the day, they are all a Microsoft list. So what I recommend doing is scrolling on down here, and then we are going to see some templates. And so now this is a great way to kickstart your creation process. And then in Microsoft Forms, we can go templates on the left-hand side. So here we can see the templates for both of these applications. So in Microsoft Forms, we have templates for feedback, registration, research, requests, and even evaluations. Whereas in Microsoft Lists, we have issue tracker, employee onboarding, travel requests with approval, and so many other good options. So for Microsoft Lists, let's go with this travel requests with approvals because approvals is a unique feature to Microsoft Lists that we will dive into in a little bit. So once you select your template, you can then preview all of the fields that are going to be on that template, and we can customize all of this. So let's go use template. We will give it a name, and I'm quite happy with this default name, but the create in, this is where we want to define that 365 group or Microsoft team. And particularly with Microsoft Lists, it's important that we assign this to the correct Microsoft team from the beginning, because if you have two lists within the same team, then we can actually link the content together. So let's select My Lists, and then we will go to Operations and then Create. So we can see that our list has been created. And now for Microsoft Forms, let's go with Requests, the expense reimbursement form. So we can see our form has now been created. So similar to Microsoft Lists, this is just a template and we can customize these fields as we need to. Now, these two look a little bit different because Microsoft Forms was the original data collection form process within the Microsoft suite. However, Microsoft Lists has always been a way that we can organize and track our data. And in 2024, Microsoft introduced the new Forms experience. So here we can create a new form, based on the contents of this list. And any new response within this form is automatically going to be recorded within the Microsoft list. Now, there are two key differences as well as two similarities between these two form features that I want to highlight before we dive into the framework. Firstly, for Microsoft List Forms feature, by default, all of the columns that are within the list are going to be automatically added into your form. However, we do have an option here to customize our form and only include a couple of items. So if you only wanted somebody that's filling out the form to enter some starter data that will then be completed after the form is filled out, then we have the ability to do that. And we'll dive into all of this a little bit more later. I did also want to note that there are a couple of column types, such as metadata, that are not available yet within this forms feature, but hopefully we will see those soon. A quick pause in today's video to say that my ebook, Navigating Microsoft Passages, is available for free for you to download. Inside, you will find a treasure map to help you navigate Microsoft 365 apps with confidence so that you can increase your productivity and efficiency and reclaim your time for meaningful work. I will include a link at the end of this tutorial as well as in the description of this one, so be sure to check it out and grab your copy today. Secondly, within the Microsoft List Forms feature, if we go to Forms, you'll notice that we can actually create new forms within this list. So you can have multiple forms for different people to fill out or for different sub-purposes of your list, and then it will all funnel into the same place. Moving along, there are two similarities between both of these form features. Number one is that we have an option to make these questions required, and we have a similar experience within Microsoft List Forms. Additionally, we can add branching. So for Microsoft List Forms, we need to have a choice column added. Just going to drag this up here, and then we can go branching. So branching allows us to say, if this answer is selected, then go to this as the next question. We have a similar experience within Microsoft Forms. And if we just select the ellipses here, then we can go add branching. So here are the key takeaways from the fundamental comparison. Now that we have these essentials out of the way, let's move on to the framework, which is BAC 1, 2, 3. And this means that we have 1B, 2A, and 3C components to help you decide which form experience you should use. Starting off with the first B, which is for box. Now with box, we can ask ourselves the question, which is, what form fields will you need? So to add fields to either of these forms, we can scroll on down to the bottom and go add new question. So here we will see all of the question types that we can add to this form. In Microsoft List Forms, we have a similar experience, and we can go add new field. So we will see that there are some similarities and some clear differences. So let's take a closer look. Starting off with choice, so we can see that this adds a question as well as some options. And we even have the ability to allow for multiple answers, or within forms, you can even limit the total options that they can select. Whereas with Microsoft Lists, it's really difficult to say Microsoft Lists a lot. We can go to choice, and then here we will just go choice. If we select this question, now that it's been added, we can select the ellipses and go to settings. Then there are some additional options here. Now, similarly, we can add some more choices or delete them as needed. We also have the ability where we can allow people to add values manually. So if an item or option wasn't there, then by toggling this on, then people can enter new options. Then if we scroll on down to more options, we similarly have the ability to allow for multiple selections. In this case, we aren't able to apply a limit like we are within forms. And there are some other items there, including a default value that could show up as default when people complete the form. Moving along to text. Now, this text question within Microsoft Forms is very robust, and it serves multiple purposes and comparisons to Microsoft lists. So, for example, in this question, we have an option here to toggle on long answer. So when that's toggled on, then this would be comparable to the multi-line text. When it's toggled off, then it's going to be comparable to the single line text. Now, in addition to that, we select the ellipses, then we can go restrictions. So here we can restrict the layout or format of this question. So we'll see here that we have number, which would be comparable to number, and currency. And then we even have URL down here, which would be a hyperlink column. And then within Microsoft Forms, we have a designated space for an email. We don't actually have a designated email over in Microsoft Lists. So that is an important difference. Next, we have a date, which is just a standard input date in this month, day, year format. Whereas over here, we can do date and time. And so once that is in there, we'll just call it date. We'll go to the settings. So if you wanted to, you could include time, or if you toggle that off, then it's just going to be a date. There are some additional options here, but those are the key differences. Moving along, upload file. Now, upload file is quite robust within Microsoft Forms, whereas over here, we have some additional options. So in this case, we can add an image or we can add an attachment. So images are just going to be the JPEG or PNG file format, whereas with attachments, we can really add any kind of file type. The limitations over here is that any file size, the maximum is 250 megabytes. Now, if we look over on Microsoft Forms, you can see that you can limit the number of files or specify how many files you want people to add. And we can also specify a file size. And you'll notice that we can go up to 1 gigabyte. So Microsoft Forms allows for a much larger file size to be collected through these forms. Then, if we select the ellipses here, we can go file type. And so here you can actually specify what type of files you want to add. So this is really great if you want people to, for example, only upload a PDF or only upload an image. We don't really have that much flexibility over within Microsoft Lists. Now let's take a look at some unique form fields for Microsoft Lists. Starting off, we have a yes/no column. So we can just call it yes/no. And this is a simple yes/no toggle that allows the person completing the form to quickly toggle things on or off. And this works really well within a checklist scenario. Next, we also have the ability to assign or tag a person or group within your organization. Now, this doesn't mean that this list item is going to sync with Planner or To Do, but there are some advanced built-in automations within Microsoft Lists that we'll take a look at in a little bit that can be tied into this person column. The next field is location. Now, every form can have up to 2 location columns, and this form template already had 2. So here we have the destination column. And if we go preview, then we can see this in action. So let's, for example, start to type the Vancouver Public Library, and you will see all of these different options appear. So it pulls places and just ensures that the addresses or locations entered into your form are accurate. The final unique column within Microsoft List Forms is the lookup column. Now, this allows you to reference another list within the same Microsoft team or Microsoft 365 group. I'm not going to do a demonstration here, but I will include a playlist at the end of this tutorial that will outline this form feature, beginner for Microsoft Lists, as well as how you can use this lookup column effectively. But overall, this lookup value allows you to connect your data that is within the same Microsoft team and can be quite a powerful tool. Now, let's take a look at some questions that are unique to Microsoft Forms. We go add new question, then here we can add a rating. So this allows people to rate things on a star scale, and you can add different levels as well as different symbols. Next, we have ranking. So ranking would allow people to order or rank the different options that you specify here. Next, we have Likert. So Likert looks familiar from most surveys. And similar to Likert, we have the Net Promoter Score. The last question that we have is not a question, but it's the ability to add a section to your form, and then we can add new questions to that section. So sections allow us to segment our form into pages where you can organize questions by themes or topic. It just puts your form into bite-sized chunks so that people can digest the content and they would be more likely to complete the form when it's broken down into these sections. Here are the key takeaways from the box component of the framework, highlighting in blue the comparable form field types. And then in yellow, we have the unique form fields for the different applications. Now that we have covered all of these different scenarios, let's now move on to the first A in the framework, which is for audience. And when we think about audience, we want to ask ourselves, who are you collecting data from? Knowing who is your audience or who is going to be submitting this form is a very important factor because there are some limitations to be aware of. So in Microsoft Forms, if we go collect responses, then we will see that we have quite a few options here. So you can collect responses from anybody, including people outside of your organization, but this is grayed out for us because we have a file upload question in there. So we are not able to have people from outside of our organization uploading files via the form. If we remove those file upload questions, then we could collect responses from people outside of our organization. Now, even when we have people inside of our organization, we have some additional options here. Firstly, people must be signed in with their work account to complete the form, but you can have an option to make it anonymous so their name won't be recorded, or you can have their name be recorded when they submit the response. Additionally, we can limit the number of responses per person. So if, for example, it's a vote on something and everybody only gets one vote, then you could toggle this on so you would only be collecting one response per person. Then if we go over to this send form button within Microsoft Lists, we'll see here that we don't really have many options on who can submit this form. So only people within your organization with the link can respond. And these are not going to be anonymous. So if you copy the link and open it in the browser, then you'll see that when you submit this form, the owner will see your name and email address. So it's never going to be anonymous. That's why this record name feature within Forms is a really nice feature. And additionally, if we go to specific people in your organization can respond, then this is another great advantage of Microsoft Forms because we can designate a specific group of people. Whereas over here, anybody with the link can submit the form. These are the key takeaways from the first A, which is audience. Now let's move on to the second A for after collection. Now for the after collection component, we want to ask the question, what do you plan to do with the data once the form is submitted? Within Microsoft Forms, when responses are submitted, you can go to View Responses, and this shows you a nice snapshot of all of the responses. And for the choice fields, you'll even get a nice visual so that you can easily grasp the representation. In addition to that, you can also open up your results in an Excel file, allowing you to analyze your data in pivot tables or charts just for more customized data analysis. Moving along to Microsoft Lists, there are a lot of advanced built-in features that can be used after the form is submitted. Similar to Microsoft Forms, we also have the ability to export our data to Excel or export it to Power BI for further data analysis. In addition to that, we have some automations. So we can create a rule, for example, that you can be notified when an item is created, deleted, or modified. And when you create these rules, so we could say, if the airline changes and the new value is anything, then send an email to. And for this, what I really like is that we can even define one of those person columns to be notified, or you can define a specific person by entering their email address here. We can also configure approvals. Now, because we already use the template travel request with approvals, the approval is already enabled. And if we click on approvals, then basically, because this is an airline or travel expense approval process list, we have now built in an integration with the approvals app that will automatically update this list item based on the approval status. So for these automations, I like to think of it as Microsoft Lists is a live data tracker because we can update and change this information or work on it and use it as a starting point for beginning workflows. Whereas with Microsoft Forms, that form is submitted and then it just sits there in Microsoft Excel. Of course, you can do a lot of functions within Microsoft Excel, but Microsoft Lists allows for a lot more robust and built-in integrations that are really easy to use. Another great benefit of Microsoft Lists are these built-in views, and you can even create your own new views. So for example, this one has been created to group our data by approval status. Of course, we just have one item in here, but you can see items that are not submitted yet will easily be grouped. And then if some were submitted and approved, then we would see a different grouping down here. So these different views at the top are a great way for you to easily visualize your data. In addition to these built-in features, both Microsoft Forms and Microsoft Lists also integrate with Power Automate. Now, before this Forms experience was created, I had actually created a Microsoft form, and then I used Power Automate to feed that form response into Microsoft Lists. But because we now have this Forms feature built right into Microsoft Lists, you don't need to set up that additional flow unless you absolutely need to. Somebody did ask me if they should create their form and then feed the data into Microsoft Lists via Power Automate or even vice versa. And I would just ask yourself, what is the purpose for doing that? Of course, we have seen already that there are limitations of both of these applications. So if you did need to use Microsoft Forms and you do want that data to be in Microsoft Lists, then you can create that flow. Here are the key takeaways for the after collection component. Overall, Microsoft Forms responses are a one-time entry of data, whereas Microsoft Lists forms responses are live and they can initiate the beginning of a process and information can be manually or automatically updated after the form is complete. So now that we have looked at the after collection, let's move on to the first C of the framework, which is for collection. And for collection, we can ask ourselves, how do you want to collect the data? Within Microsoft Forms, we can go collect responses. And then here we have some advanced options for sharing our form. So at the top here, if you just wanted to copy a link, then we have the option to shorten the URL, which is quite helpful because they can be very long. In addition to that, we can share a QR code and embed this into a video, for example, or even a presentation to gain insights right away. In addition to that, we also have the ability to copy some HTML code so that we can embed our form into a web page. Within Microsoft Lists, we can go up to Forms, and we can select our form, and then go Send Form. And here, the only option that we have is to copy this link, and it is actually quite a long link. So hopefully Microsoft will implement some advanced capabilities here to shorten the URL, and having that QR code or HTML snippet would be quite helpful. Here are the key takeaways from the collection component of the framework. Overall, Microsoft Forms has some advanced features for sharing our form to collect responses, and hopefully we will see some of these advanced capabilities within Microsoft List Forms experience soon. Let's now move on to the second C within our framework, which is for collaboration. And when we think about collaboration, we want to ask ourselves the question, how do you want to collaborate with your team on form results? In Microsoft Forms, we will navigate in Microsoft Teams to the team and channel that we want to collaborate this form on. Then we can go to the plus icon and then locate forms. Here, we can create a new form or we can add an existing form. Let's select our form. Then we have some drop-down options here. So the collect responses is not really for collaboration. That is going to embed the form into the channel to be completed. If you want to collaborate with your team on the results, then you can select Show Results. Or if you want to collaborate with your team on the form creation or the results, then you can select Collaborate. I like to collaborate with my team on the results, so let's go ahead and save. Within Teams, we can now go up to this chat icon within the Channel tab, and now we can chat with our team on this results for the expense reimbursement. Microsoft Lists allows for a more granular collaboration. So when you hover over the list item, you can select this little comment button here, and then this will open up the list item for view. And on the right-hand side, we have the ability to add a comment. And what I really like about these comments is that they follow this list item. And if you also wanted to, for example, tag people in your organization, then they will be notified when you have submitted the comment. So this provides a great way to have a chat history on a specific item that you can easily refer back to at a later date. Here are the key takeaways for the collaboration component of the framework. Now that we have taken a look at the second C, let's move on to the final C of the framework, which is connection. Now with connection, we can ask ourselves the question, do you need to connect or link your data to another data source? With Microsoft Forms, we don't have the ability to connect our form or individual form responses to anything specific. However, within Microsoft Lists, as we already mentioned earlier, we can add a column and we can make this be a lookup column. So this allows us to link our list with another list or even a SharePoint document library. Here are the key takeaways for the connection component of the framework. Here is a summary of the framework from blocks, audience, after collection, collaboration, and connection. If you want to learn more about Microsoft lists or the Microsoft list form experience, then you can check out this playlist here.